When it comes to how we discuss budding stars or young superstars, the conversation always goes back to the same thing. It's, can you do it in the playoffs? What you're doing during the regular season is great, but ultimately, the championship is the ultimate prize. That's what you play the game for. And there's a very big difference between regular season basketball and playoff basketball. And so naturally, no matter what a guy does during the regular season, it's always going to come back to, okay, this is great, but can you do it in the games that matter? And I think it's those questions that I think are what make what Shai Gilgeous-Alexander did in Game 4's win over Dallas so impressive. Because throughout this entire season, he's had to have those questions, or he's had to have those questions thrown in his face, where it doesn't matter that he's putting up over 30 a game, doesn't matter that he's positioning himself to make first team All-NBA, doesn't matter that OKC is the #1 seed in the Western Conference. It's always gone back to okay, but can you do it in the playoffs on the biggest stage? And as Game 4 is unfolding, Dallas controlled the game most of the way. They were up as many as 14, led for literally most of the game, and you could just sort of feel the narrative forming around SGA and the Thunder as a whole of like, okay, see, this is what we're talking about. This is why we were skeptical all season long. Didn't matter that you guys were the 1 seed. This was a great story. This was a great season, great step in the right direction, but you guys are a bit ahead of schedule. You needed to take some lumps, some bumps and bruises. This is to show you the difference between regular season and playoff basketball. You're going to go down 3-1. It's going to hurt, but you're going to learn from this and come back years later. Like, that's what it felt like it was building towards, because the Mavs just had control of this game for so long. And then SGA happened. SGA happened with 10 of his 34 points in the fourth quarter, finished the game, also with 8 rebounds, 5 assists, and 0 turnovers. They outscored Dallas by 8 points in that fourth. And you look at the way he hit those shots, it wasn't some unprecedented hot streak. It's what Shai Gilgeous-Alexander always does. It was never in a rush, never overwhelmed by any defender. He's going to do his moves, get into his bag, and get to his spots on the court. And that's exactly what he did. He only hit a few shots within the paint. Most of his buckets, came from the mid-range area. And it's just, when I think about this game, it's always impressive to get a road playoff win, especially with the stakes being like the series completely changes now. To go from down 3-1 to now tied at 2 with home court advantage, that's a miraculous accomplishment. But for a young guy like SGA to lead the charge in that way, where I feel like this is going to be one of those games that we look back on as one of those games where, whatever questions you had about his ability to do it in the playoffs, and ultimately we don't know if he could do it en route to a championship until he actually does it, but this is one of those games I feel like we're going to look back on and say, oh, this is one of those games that he proved it, that he proved, no, I could do this in the playoffs on the biggest stage, to get a road win, to not back up the series and to get home court advantage, and a game that really didn't feel like you had control over, for them to really just take this from Dallas. It's not like Dallas rolled over at all and it was a blowout win. No, OKC had to fight back from down double digits to get this win. And just in that context, it's what makes it so impressive that SGA, as much as he possibly can, because ultimately, he can't prove himself in the conference finals or the finals until he actually gets there. But as far as what he can do in the moment to prove himself, this was as impressive an outing as I've seen, to win the game, to come back with the win. And it's just, it feels like it's going to be one of those special moments we look back on as like, oh, this is where SGA really started to make some noise in terms of he really can do this when it matters most. And it was so impressive to watch, and I'm excited to see him continue to prove that in the coming games and however long OKC lasts in the playoffs.